situation is one that's important for a time like this, because the similarities are just incredible. And to think that it was a 1993 election, and now we are dealing with a 2023 election, so there is definitely a cyclical pattern of repeat of bad stuff in our country, and that really should be the basis on which this desire to ignite some form of a never say never again is critical. You know, I just happened to have been one of those who voted for the first time in that 1993 part. And the reason was, I mean, we grew up mostly with military rule. And at the time that I could have first voted, which was the 1979 election, that was by the time I could claim to be 18, you know, to be of age to vote. We were in the university, and so when elections were on, it didn't concern us really. I didn't concern us. I was far away in Nsukka. What was our own with registering to vote or anything? It just wasn't part of the traditional cultural thing for us at that time. So, of course, we didn't vote in 1979. It was by the next time we had anything that had to do with elections, just turned out to be 1993. Can you imagine? 1993. That was when we then got the opportunity to vote. So when Pat first wrote Never Again, and then followed up with Atedo as well as SYMFONI, to put out a spread in the newspaper asking all professionals to not continue to behave as if the situation in the country did not concern them. They were speaking to the choir, because I was already, you know, very much there myself. And at that time, I was already a co-founder of Transparency International. So it really was down my alleyway to just step out and be part of that movement. And as he said, over time, we had different sets of leadership. And for me, I think that a critical thing in this gathering is to actually do an evaluation of where we are. Because sometimes we are too quick to thinking that nothing has changed, whereas a lot has changed. One thing that I know has changed, Pat, is that, look, if the young people looked into this hall and saw us, they would think we're stupid. Do you know why? Because, frankly speaking, they think that we're part of the problem. When they look at our age, they simply think, surely you did nothing to salvage Nigeria. So, you know, sitting around the table with you is not my interest. And that, we know, there's a reason for it. They have watched people in our generation fail them over and over again. So they basically tar everybody with a brush. But in identifying that something has indeed changed, we can also see the same young people look at people from the perspective of what they have stood for and align with those people. So that's why, for example, you can look at some of those that they would love to be associated with, and you see clearly that what they are in search of are people who symbolize the values that they are eager to write. And so if that is the case, then we're closer to a rallying point of what would simply not create tension and dichotomies amongst those of us that want a different society, alongside the younger generation that have basically mobilized themselves into a movement. The truth be told, some of the people who have taken the biggest bashing for taking a stand around the matter of values are outside of the, the regional enclave that their leaders represent. Isn't that the case? They've taken a big bashing. And what is it that they've been bashed for? It's been for standing on values. So, ladies and gentlemen, I do think that our work is cut out for us. We really just simply need to say, truly, who are those that don't have a threshold of what integrity is? Because that's really what this is about, Pat. I have seen over time that Nigerians process integrity on the basis of thresholds. Some would keep integrity when it is only $50 million involved, 50 million naira, forgive me. As soon as it turns to 500 million naira, they tell you that that threshold of integrity, they can't continue with it. Some would keep that integrity up until 500 million. Then when 5 billion is on the table, they say, a whole 5 billion, please, you know, after 5 billion, I can manage to find a way around integrity. And then some would say, oh, 5 billion, I can still keep my integrity until you tell them that it's 50 billion that's on the table. Then they say 50 billion. Do you mean 50 billion? Please, carry your integrity and go. So how can you build anything out of this contextual definition of what integrity is? And yet we know that integrity is the core of the institutions that societies build, because integrity encompasses everything that you can imagine in terms of standing for the public values that are outside of personal interest and benefit. To stand for public values that are outside of your personal interest and benefit. That's what a person of character really epitomizes. My father would say to us that character is the lasting currency. Every other currency could go out of fashion. A central bank can just come and just change the denominator or the denomination. But character will never go out of fashion. It is a lasting currency, but that's what we're struggling with. At the School of Politics, Policy and Governance, where Pat also teaches, we're training. We totally said that this problem is a problem first of weak, unstructured, fragile demand side for a decent society. That is the electorate not having the capacity to influence outcomes that are favorable even to themselves. And then we said the second part of it is the existing pipeline that supplies political leadership that is corrupted, and that it is so entrenched that it inherently subordinates the public good for personal, private, and narrow interests. And then we said it is the existence of so-called institutions or constitution or regulatory systems that should regulate the relationship between the demand side and the supply side, but which has fallen adrift. And therefore, it is captive to the machinations of the supply side.